Dr. Scott began with what originally drove us, I think, with imaginative literature, with fiction, and with poetry. But recently what has driven us, I think, is concern about the teaching of nonfiction, because nonfiction, we were compelled to turn to that by the Common Core and by a lot of teachers who asked for more help with it. And nonfiction, we began to realize, dominates the day for most people. You live in nonfiction. After all, nonfiction is a huge area. If fiction is the novel and the short story, nonfiction is everything else. And everything else covers a lot of ground. It's everything from the editorial in the newspaper to the political speech to the letter to Santa Claus to your grocery list. It's virtually everything else. So we began to look at the teaching of nonfiction in the schools and made some interesting and kind of frightening discoveries. We asked about, I think it was about 1,300 teachers in grades 4 to 12 what they did with the teaching of nonfiction, and they told us this. They told us, among other things, we'll go through these fairly quickly, but they told us, among other things, that almost most of them spend about a half an hour getting their kids to read nonfiction in class. Another, and I forget what that is, 18, 20%, had no reading at all of nonfiction in the classes. So we've got over 50% of the teachers who did not request that their kids read any nonfiction in school. So we figured, well, perhaps they are asking their kids to do all of this reading out of school, at home, for homework. And we asked again about how many pages of nonfiction do you assign a week? And this represents none, and this represents less than 10 pages. So most of the kids in this survey of about 1,300 teachers, most of the kids in this survey were getting very little experience, very little practice in the reading of the very stuff that is going to dominate their lives. Now, we've concluded that that's got to go up if kids are going to get good at it. It takes time to get good at anything. And one of the things, and this brings me ultimately to the revised title for this talk, ain't going to be a teacher around when you really need one. Because it seems to me that what we are not managing to do is to develop in kids the self-reliance and the independence that they will need with a body of texts that they will have to conquer, they will have to deal with for the rest of their lives. We need these kids to be both responsive readers, that is to say they've got to be moved by texts the way the poems move us. But they've also got to be responsible because they are going to be moved by lots of texts that push them in inappropriate ways and in unfortunate directions, it seems to me. And we have concluded through some of these surveys, we've come to the conclusion that we may not be doing our kids a service by promoting the conception of nonfiction that we seem to be promoting in many schools. We did another survey. I think this one was about 2,300 teachers, grades K to 12. It was a quick survey, informal survey. But we asked them, what definition, what do you teach kids nonfiction is? This word cloud sort of represents what we were told by teachers. And by the way, this was echoed tremendously by the kids. You know Wordle, do you not? The largest font represents the most frequently offered word or phrase. And you see that the largest font and the largest item in here is informational texts. I suppose facts may be larger, but facts, true facts, informational texts, facts and research, stories that use real facts. Nonfiction is not fake. True accounts of things, truth. This is what teachers report that they encourage their kids to think of as nonfiction. And yet it seems to us that in most cases, nonfiction may not necessarily be truthful, may not really be straightforward. This definition of nonfiction, this easy opposition between fiction and nonfiction, where fiction is imaginative and fake, and nonfiction is true and factual. Fiction is fantasy, unreality, invented people in maybe real places, but invented people, whereas nonfiction is real people doing real things, saying things they actually said. Nonfiction is real. This opposition, it seems to me, relieves kids of the primary task that they are confronted with when they deal with nonfiction. It gives them, it allows them to accept this kind of syllogistic reasoning. If the text is nonfiction, then by definition, nonfiction is true. Therefore, this text is true. And that is so seldom the case, especially when you get into political and advertising and the like. When you get into those realms, this syllogism is not only untrue, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. Because if kids get to come to texts and accept them at face value when they aren't to be accepted at face value, those kids are really going to be handicapped. It seems to me we've come to several conclusions, several notions about fiction and nonfiction. And one of them is this simple distinction. It's not that simple because it's a continuum. But it seems to us that fiction invites us in to the writer's world. He has created a world, not completely his creation. He may locate things in King of Prussia or New York or London, but much of his world is invited. You come in and you accept it. If you can't accept flying brooms, at least for the moment you have picked up the Harry Potter stories, then you just put the book away. You put it aside. But it seems to us that if fiction invites us into the imaginative world of the author, nonfiction, it seems, enters into our world, and it purports to tell us something about it. I say purports because sometimes it doesn't tell us honestly about it. This poses for the teacher and the student a problem, it seems to me. The teacher and the student ultimately need to learn to confront the possibility that the text is not truthful. Nonfiction, it seems to us, is an opportunity to change your mind. And this flies in the face of what we know about the way most people use nonfiction. Most people go to texts, argumentative texts, political texts, and the like, in order to confirm what they already know. Media studies have shown that for many years. I think one media study I read not too recently, about a year ago, suggested that about 80% of the people who go to texts go to them for the purpose of having the text tell them you were already right about everything. You don't have to rethink a single thing. What you believe is true, and you can be content with it. It seems to me that we need somehow to convince our students that nonfiction is not that. It is an opportunity to change your mind. So it seems to us also that we have to do something with readers that textbooks don't do for them. We have to teach them to go into texts looking for the potential of surprise. I think a lot of textbooks are just one thing after another. And as a consequence, kids go to them to take notes, perhaps to record what they think will be on the test. But they don't go into them saying to themselves, we're going to go into this text for the purpose of rethinking an issue, a problem, re-seeing possibilities. All right.
Don't know much biology.
Right. Very quickly.
Don't know much about a science book.
It seems to us we have to go to nonfiction when we have questions to answer. We also have to go to nonfiction when we have answers we need to question. And I don't think kids do that nearly enough. And this requires that at some point we don't teach kids just to take from texts. We have to teach them the art of resisting and occasionally rejecting the nonfiction we present them. You know something about history. Not much, but something.